Good afternoon, and welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Keith Silva. We hope that when you tune into our program, you learn something new about Vermont. The same goes for producing the program. We're curious too. And boy, oh boy, did we learn something a couple of years ago when we visited with a local Burlington historian who brought us the story of Lumiere North America and Autochrome color photography. As they say in television, but wait, there's more. We've invited Hugo Martinez Cazon back to the program because there is indeed more. Hugo works as an environmental engineer for the state of Vermont, and it was through his time with the state that he became interested in the lost bit of history. Welcome back to Across the Fence, Hugo.
Thank you, Keith.
I know the Lumiere brothers as pioneers of cinema, for which I should note as a cinema movie fan, they said there was no future. It's good that they stuck to the creation of things and not the continuation, I guess. What was their connection between these two brothers from France and little old Burlington?
Well, they created a factory here. It was called Lumiere North America Company. It's down Flynn Avenue, used to be called Park Avenue. So if you go down Flynn Avenue, almost at the waterfront, right after the railroad tracks is the factory, the Lumiere North America Company. And they created that factory to make black and white color dry plates as well as X-ray plates, and to stockpile and sell cinema film, which they were very world famous for all of that. But they invented color photography in Lyon and manufactured the earliest Autochrome here in Burlington as well.
Why Burlington? Why not Chicago or New York? What is it about this?
Well, that's a really good question, because they did look at these big cities, and that would be the natural choice. But Burlington was a town of 18,000 people. It had a chemical industry of dyeing for wool and cotton, but primarily they had a really large French-speaking population where they could keep tabs on the secret of the new development that they were coming up with, Autochrome, and be able to keep communication going really smoothly with the factory back in Lyon.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that gets sort of lost in this, at least for me, I concentrate more on the film part of it and the historical part, but we're talking about cutting edge technology. This is along the lines of anything that we would consider cutting edge today as far as mechanical. We'll get into that in a minute. But this is the highest of high tech.
Oh yeah. Autochrome was unbelievable. It was unexpected, unknown, and most people in the U.S. think of color as being Kodachrome. Kodachrome didn't happen for 35 years after Autochrome. So this revolutionized the world. Right.
People were literally seeing in color. Okay, now that we're caught up, you've got some new information. You've learned about some more people who were central to this process. Who can you tell us about?
Well, one person that we can talk about is Francis Doublier. He was a foreman at the factory. And so this is a great story that would take many hours, but in a nutshell, his professors in Montreal that I met introduced me to a PhD candidate that had done her PhD on Francis Doublier, studying at the Eastman Foundation, Rochester, and City of Paris universities. Her name is Clara Auclair, and they put me in touch with her. We were talking, and I said, well, from 1900 to 1910, like, what do you have for Doublier? And she says, well, I don't really know what happened. Do you have anything about this guy? And I had researched the name of some workers, and of course I had him as a foreman. She put me straight that this was the same man. Prior to being here, he shot the first film of the coronation of Nicholas II in Russia, 1896. The first time film was shown you had to turn it by hand.
Right.
He is the one that actually turned the machine. And so that guy came here and worked here for 9 years, and he's heralded in 1915 as the pioneer of cinema in the United States. So that's 1915.
Right.
And what the reason for that is that after he worked in Burlington, he stayed in the U.S. and went to Fort Lee, New Jersey, where current knowledge of cinema history is that that's kind of the birthplace of early cinema in the United States.
Right.
He established some of the studios and the factories, and into the 1920s, he was world-renowned and had spent, prior to that, almost 10 years here.
Just the foreman.
He wasn't the foreman.
Right.
Yeah,
he was a good choice for foreman. Let's say that.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
a good choice. You also have been researching some female photographers. Tell us about Clarissa Hovey.
Sure. I mean, I like talking about her because oftentimes people think that there weren't a lot of women photographers. And actually, photography, the men in the photography world were saying, no, this is a gender-neutral profession, which was pretty advanced for the day. And
Not the language they used, I'm sure, but
they said it's a gender-neutral profession.
Okay.
They said it, And when I was looking at Francis Dublier's information here to figure out where he lived and confirming that he did live and work here, he's listed on the same page as Susie Dottie. Susie Dottie was a local woman photographer. So there were, even in a village of 18,000 people, there were 2 women photographers that had their own studios.
Wow.
Yeah. So Clarissa Hovey had a studio in downtown Boston on Boylston Avenue, and color photography became a product in 1907. So Antoine Lumière, the father, came to do a product launch in Boston, and all the major people were there. And Clarissa Hovey was just down the street in Boylston Avenue at her studio. So she started taking photographs in Autochrome. She has a great article that I read where she would take portraits of people, but she would always have a camera at the ready with Autochrome. And while people were kind of relaxing, she would take a picture of them in Autochrome and sell it to them. So she ended up in a year creating an exhibit of 200 Autochromes. So, and she's very little known. I mean, Helen Murdoch is famous because she traveled around the world taking Autochromes. But it was the first time that people could see the world and share it with others and say, well, this is what Pakistan looks like. So photojournalism came out of Autochrome because it's so much more compelling. If I say to you World War I, you have a black and white image.
Yes.
But Autochrome allowed people to take Autochrome pictures in color of World War I.
Right.
So that's kind of the importance of color and women as photographers.
Well, we sort of are talking about this like it's not in the room. You have a reproduction here. This isn't a plate, an original Autochrome plate or anything like that. But this is sort of what we're talking about. Adam, our director can get an image of that. I think if we've got it straight enough, Adam. But you can sort of see that this is sort of the quality of the color that we're talking about here as far as, the image. And you said this woman only became famous a couple of years ago. Tell me the story quickly.
Well, nobody remembered that Autochrome existed, and this photograph, along with others of the same person, were unknown. But when Autochrome became rediscovered, quote unquote, people started posting things online, and this museum posted this picture by Mervyn O'Gorman, and Christina is the name of the model. And when the photograph came out, it's so clear, it's so much better than the early Kodak that people were blown away, and she became really well known, and nobody knew what her name was. So Christina is her name, and she became a renowned model, although she's probably been dead maybe 80 years.
Right. We were talking earlier about how cutting edge technological the Autochrome process was. you found something recently about an announcement in a British newspaper about the technical aspect. What did you discover?
Well, I mean, the only factory that the Lumieres had was outside of Lyon, was here in Burlington. So the significance of the factory is that this is the only one outside of France.
Right.
And they were making the plates in inches. And that made it possible to sell to the markets like Great Britain that were in inches. Right. And so the irony was that the plates that were made in Lyon couldn't be sold in London because they wouldn't fit in the machine, in the cameras.
Right. But they solved that problem by having the factory in Burlington in the States that could do it on the standard scale. I can't remember what the original scale was. That we're just got a couple more minutes left. What happens to the factory? You've got all of a sudden it just ends.
Well, the factory, let's remember, had 150 workers, almost 200 workers, primarily women, Burlington women. And it was celebrated when the 300th anniversary of Champlain coming happened. There was a big to-do and a huge displaying of Autochrome photographs. So it was very, very important. The factory closed because the importation tax for gelatin went up, and it didn't make economic sense anymore to run the factory that way. So they went back to making the factory, the plates in Lyon, and importing them, and this factory was redundant, so they closed it down.
Well, a great piece of Burlington history. I think we've barely scratched the surface. I know we've barely scratched the surface. We were talking. Thank you very much, Hugo. It was very nice to meet you and to hear some more about this. And I know you've got some articles in the Vermont History magazine that'll be coming out that further elucidate this process. Yes, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Well, as they say in the movies, that's a wrap. My thanks to everyone here at WCX who made today's program picture perfect. And as always, thank you for stopping by Across the Fence.